All right. So, you guys always send in the best stuff. And this time is no exception. You've flagged something really significant for us to dive into.
For sure, for sure.
A real kind of like shake up in how we think about a public health measure that's been around for a long time. We're talking about adding fluoride to community water systems.
Yeah.
And the recent move by HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Yeah.
directing the CDC to reevaluate its guidance on it.
That's big. It is.
Yeah. I mean, this is a development with potentially far-reaching consequences, right?
Absolutely.
So our mission, as always, is to really get to the heart of this. We've got these news articles, you guys sent in.
Right.
What we need to understand is like the driving force behind this whole reevaluation, the different perspectives that are now kind of in play.
Yeah.
And ultimately what this could mean for, our health, for everybody's health.
Exactly.
And what immediately jumps out to me is the tension here.
Right.
For decades, putting fluoride in our water has been considered like a major win for public health.
Huge success story.
Yeah, huge success story.
Yeah.
And now that very foundation is being questioned at a really high level.
At the highest level.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's, to really break this down, let's start with Secretary Kennedy Jr.'s directive.
Okay.
What specific concerns has he raised?
Okay, so the information we have suggests that his worries are kind of centered on the potential impact of fluoride
Okay.
on brain development and bone health.
Okay.
He's made some pretty strong statements in the past,
Like what?
even describing fluoride as, and I'm quoting here,
Okay.
an industrial waste.
Wow.
Associated with arthritis, bone fractures, bone cancer, IQ loss, neurodevelopmental disorders, and thyroid disease.
So some pretty serious claims.
Yeah.
Really serious claims.
It's important to note, though, that these specific assertions haven't been, supported by the major medical organizations,
Right.
like the American Medical Association,
Yeah.
Okay, so there's not really a consensus.
There isn't a consensus on these claims.
Okay.
But it highlights a really, significant difference between the Secretary's viewpoint
Yeah.
and the prevailing kind of like scientific understanding.
Okay, so we're seeing a divergence here, potentially.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah. And it's not just words, is it?
No, it's not.
We saw his positive response when Utah became the first state to ban mandatory water fluoridation.
Right. He praised Utah.
Like, really praised them.
Called them a leader in making America healthy again.
Yeah, that's a loaded phrase for sure.
Yes, it is.
And said he hopes other states will follow suit.
That's right.
So this action really underscores, how deeply he feels about this.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's, one side of the coin.
One perspective.
One perspective driving this reevaluation.
Right.
Now let's consider the other side.
Okay.
What has been the CDC's position on water fluoridation up to this point?
So the CDC has long been a very vocal advocate
Okay.
for community water fluoridation.
Okay.
And they've recommended adding, small controlled amounts of fluoride to public water supplies to prevent cavities.
And it's not just seen as like a minor benefit, is it?
No, not at all.
The articles highlight, a really significant designation.
Right. The CDC considers it to be one of the greatest public health achievements of the 20th century.
Wow.
It's a powerful endorsement.
Yeah.
And it really reflects decades of perceived positive impact.
And they put numbers to that impact.
Yeah. They estimate that community water fluoridation leads to about a 25% reduction in cavities.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, and that's for both children and adults.
Okay, so across the board.
It's across the board.
That's a really substantial decrease
Yeah.
in dental disease. I mean, if that's accurate, that's a huge deal.
It is a huge deal.
And then we have Professor Schwartzberg in the articles who provide some valuable historical context,
Yes.
reminding us, what it was like before fluoridation was so widespread.
Right. He points out that, before we started adding fluoride to the water,
Yeah.
we saw an awful lot of people with dental disease.
Wow.
So it gives us a glimpse into a time with a lot more oral health challenges.
Yeah, so this wasn't some minor problem.
No, it was very serious.
That's really interesting. And a vast majority of the population currently benefits from this, right?
Yes. Over 60% of people in the U.S. receive fluoridated water.
As of 2022.
Yeah. That's a lot of people.
So this is a widespread public health intervention.
It is.
Affecting a significant portion of the American population.
A huge portion.
Yeah. So when we consider, this long history of support,
Yeah.
and the potential for, a major shift,
Right.
the concerns voiced by a lot of public health experts become very understandable.
They do.
And those concerns seem to be really strongly articulated in the articles.
Yeah, it's not just a few isolated voices.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it at all.
The opposition from public health experts
Yeah.
and dental professionals seems to be very robust.
And unified.
Yeah, they're really worried about what could happen.
Yeah, the potential negative consequences.
Yeah, if we alter this well-established practice,
Right.
we have Professor Schwartzberg again,
Yeah.
calling a change in guidance
Right.
disastrous.
Strong words.
That's incredibly strong language.
It is, and his reasoning is that, a change like this would inevitably lead to more dental disease.
Okay.
And importantly, he really emphasizes that this impact would be felt most by those who have limited access to dental care.
Okay.
So,
So it's an equity issue, too.
it's a big equity issue.
Yeah.
We have to consider that.
Absolutely. And Brett Kessler, the president of the ADA,
Yes.
he also doesn't mince words.
No, he uses the word disheartening
Wow.
to describe what he sees as a growing distrust of credible science.
So he's talking about,
Time-tested, evidence-based science.
yeah.
He calls the misinformation surrounding fluoride deeply troublesome.
Okay, so he sees this as part of a larger trend.
Yeah, a trend of distrust in science.
Right, and he directly links this trend to government officials like Secretary Kennedy
Yeah,
supporting what he views as inaccurate information.
that's right.
And Kessler specifically states
Yeah.
that when government officials stand behind the commentary of misinformation and distrust peer-reviewed research,
Mhm.
it is injurious to public health.
That's a very serious warning.
Yeah, and just to clarify for our listeners, peer-reviewed research,
Yeah.
refers to those scientific studies that have been rigorously vetted,
Examined by other experts.
right, by other experts in the field.
Yeah, to make sure that the evidence is strong.
Right, so this is a high standard of evidence we're talking about.
It is.
Okay, so we have this significant pushback
Right.
from the scientific community
Mm-hmm.
and the dental community.
Yeah.
Let's take a step back for a second and look at the bigger picture here.
Okay.
Is water fluoridation something that's mandated nationwide
That's a great question.
at the federal level?
So no, the federal government doesn't mandate water fluoridation
Okay,
for the most part.
okay.
A decision of whether or not to add fluoride to the water
Yeah.
rests with local authorities.
Oh, okay, local control.
Yeah, but about a dozen states do have laws requiring it.
Okay, so there are some exceptions.
There are.
Interesting. And we're also seeing that, other federal agencies are starting to kind of examine this issue
That's right.
more closely.
Yeah, the EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin
Mm-hmm.
has said that his agency will also re-examine research on the possible risks of fluoride in drinking water.
Okay, so this indicates a broader trend.
A broader trend of scrutiny.
Yeah, at the federal level.
Oh, yeah.
And it's interesting how the articles point out that, historically this debate hasn't been strongly partisan.
No, not at all.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you see varying rates of fluoridation in states that,
Mm-hmm.
typically lean Democrat or Republican.
Yeah.
It hasn't been a political dividing line.
But it seems like Secretary Kennedy Jr. has really brought it,
He has.
into the national political conversation.
Yeah, he's really elevated its profile.
In a big way.
Yes.
And it was mentioned that even former President Trump
Yes.
has expressed support for removing fluoride.
He has?
So Kennedy Jr.'s involvement has really kind of changed the landscape here.
I think it has, yeah.
So considering all of this
Yeah.
and the possibility of a change in the CDC's guidance,
Right.
what are the potential real-world consequences?
Okay, so it's important to remember
Yeah,
that the CDC only recommends actions.
Okay.
They don't mandate them.
got it.
So ultimately, it's up to state and local authorities.
Okay.
But their guidance carries a lot of weight.
Yeah, of course.
So a change could have a big impact.
But the concern is that a change in the CDC's recommendation could create like a domino effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Professor Schwartzberg worries
Mhm.
that a change in the CDC's stance
Yeah.
could embolden states and local communities
Okay.
to stop fluoridating their water
Okay.
without fear of repercussion. And then Kessler's warning
Yeah.
about the impact of government officials supporting misinformation
Right.
becomes really relevant.
Right, because if national recommendations are altered
Mhm.
based on concerns that a lot of experts consider unfounded,
Yeah.
it could really erode public trust
It could.
in evidence-based public health measures.
Right, and not just about fluoride.
Right. This could have ripple effects.
It could.
So to summarize,
Yeah.
We have this long-standing public health measure, water fluoridation.
Right.
It's been credited with significantly reducing cavities for decades.
It has.
And now it's under serious reevaluation
Yeah.
at the highest levels of the Department of Health and Human Services
Right.
due to Secretary Kennedy Jr.'s concerns
Right.
about potential harms.
Concerns that are disputed by many experts.
Yeah, largely disputed by the
Yes.
scientific and dental communities.
That's right.
And this reexamination carries with it
Yeah.
some really significant potential implications.
That's-
For the dental health of the
Yeah.
entire population.
Well, everybody in the U.S.
Yeah, should the guidance change
Yeah.
and more communities opt out of fluoridation,
Right.
we could see an increase in dental disease.
Yeah. Especially among vulnerable populations.
Right. People who have less access to dental care.
It's exactly.
So this isn't just about, teeth.
No, it's about equity.
It's about access.
It's about health disparities.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how scientific consensus evolves
Yeah.
and the role of public trust in health recommendations.
Absolutely.
What factors should be the most important
Yeah.
in decisions like these at a national level?
That's the question.
That's the question. And
Yeah.
for you, our listener,
Yeah.
what other questions might you have about the history and all the evidence
I researched.
surrounding water fluoridation?
Yeah.
It's clearly a topic
It is.
with a lot of layers
Well, a lot to unpack.
that are worth continuing to, investigate on your own.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes. Keep doing it.